Hello and welcome all into the MO podcast. You're here with me, Consummation-san, and my lovely co-host,
Andrea.
And today we're going to be talking about the legend that is Spring-Heeled Jack.
What a ledge. What a ledge.
Now, this was a folkloric character, or maybe just an urban legend, that stalked the English British countryside for 60 plus years. So, I mean, take it as you want, whether he was real, whether it was a lot of different people, whether it was whatever, we'll talk about that, but it's quite an interesting story. Now, in 1837, the Morning Chronicle reported that some scoundrel disguised in a bear skin and wearing spring shoes has been seen jumping to and fro before foot passengers in the neighbourhood of Lewisham, and has in one or two instances greatly alarmed females. Now, this was kind of the first report that came through of Spring-Heeled Jack. The entity, only attacked females or those of the lower classes, let's say, in the first while until he kind of branched out. And the very first report of someone being accosted by him was Mary Stevens, who was attacked in Clapham Common when a strange figure leapt out of an alleyway and gripped her arms whilst kissing her face.
This is rude. Shit like that never happens to me.
You say that, but his hands were as cold and clammy as those of a corpse. And
Why, I'm bloody sure it was October.
Well, yeah, of course, you know what I mean. It was colder back then as well. They didn't have global warming.
Well, they had a lot of pollution as well to keep the sun out.
Exactly. So he could have at least blew on his hands like, oh, here we go. But Mary Stevens screamed and it scared the attacker and he ran off. So...
Was he not expecting her to scream? He was expecting her to go, oh, don't stop.
Yeah, half-assed it, really. I don't...
Don't grab my arms next time, grab my arse.
Yeah, I don't think he was expecting that reaction, and I don't know what other reaction he expected, whether it's to go, oh, swoon, take me now. But, so there were further reports of attacks on women, and the attacker would bound off, cackling in a high-pitched voice. On a few occasions, he escaped by jumping over walls, claimed to be at over 2.5 metres high. Now...
And his springy shoes.
Yeah. Apparently, he had some kind of spring shoes. This is why he was called Spring-Heeled Jack, because of his jumping ability and the way to escape. In January of 1838, the Lord Mayor of London, Sir John Cohen, revealed that he had been written to by many residents complaining about the attacks. In one particular letter, this quoted, at one house, the man rang the bell, and on the servant coming to the door, this worse than brute stood in no less dreadful figure than a spectre clad most perfectly. The consequence was that poor girl immediately swooned and has never from that moment been in her senses.
You brute!
Yeah. Now, I think this as well is something that runs through the theme of him attacking women. They never really recover. Now, whether that's artistic license on the letter writers or the journalists of the time as painting females as dainty little things, but I mean...
Or they really were just a bunch of wimps. Or maybe it was that their corsets were so goddamn tight that the sharp intake of breath, crushed their lungs against the corset and actually made them pass out. Like, oh, shit, you nearly scared the crap out. Oh, I feel a bit faint.
That's it. That's why she swooned. She had no blood or air in her.
Yeah. Goddamn corsets.
So the Lord Mayor himself, he was sceptical about the actual character of Spring-Heeled Jack, but he conceded that persons involved in this pantomime display would be caught and punished. Now, he was kind of in the public consciousness from the late 1837, but two attacks propelled Spring-Heeled Jack into kind of newspaper spotlight and him being the character that he is today. And the first one was on Jane Alsop on the 19th of February, who answered the door of her father's house by someone banging on the door, and they claimed to be a police officer. The officer said that he needed a light as they had detained Spring-Heeled Jack down the lane. Jane hurried to get a candle. She brought it back to him, and as soon as she gave the man the candle, he threw back his cloak and presented a most hideous and frightful appearance. He then proceeded...
Talk about theatrics.
Yeah. He then proceeded to vomit blue and white flames from his mouth, while his eyes resembled red balls of fire. Now, I know it's the 1900s, and, like, it's the time of, like, Dickens and all that, but did really journalists need to go with this kind of, like, verbiage?
It feels like it's just a really, really dramatic, like, it's a really dramatic dude. Like, he throws his cape back and he goes, "Ha ha, you fool, you cannot best me," and then spews blue flames in her face. Right, what gets me about this is blue flames, and her eyebrows weren't singed off, she wasn't blinded, she didn't get any third-degree burns. I'm suspecting it wasn't flames.
Yeah, I think it may have just been, like, he just burped, and she was so offended by that that she swooned.
Yeah.
The apparition then grabbed her at what she described was metallic claws. Jane screamed, and her sister appeared, and then the man fled again, which, like, he's not learnt from his past mistakes here.
Or her sister's really hardcore.
Yeah, maybe she had a poker with her, and she was just going to twat him.
Or maybe she was built like a brick shithouse.
Could be.
She come storming out the house like, "What's going on here then?" "Oh, thank God my sister's here."
Yeah.
It's kind of like me and my sister, yeah? It works.
Wow, I can't believe you said that. Oh.
I mean, she's pretty hardcore.
Yeah. I've heard her speak, yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, she doesn't quite speak like that, I guess.
I bet she could if she was riled.
She has had me dangling in the air by my neck and, like, feet just dangling with one hand, so she's pretty hardcore. So maybe Jane's sister was like that.
Indeed, I think we've all got a sister like that, to be honest with you. But yeah, Jane later described that the attacker was wearing a helmet and tight-fitting clothes akin to white oilskin. Now, he blew out blue flame in her face, and she was still going, look at the buns on him.
Chinos, love a bit of chinos.
Yeah. Like, can you bend over in them for me? Jane's dress was nearly torn off, and she suffered cuts and bruises, and a quantity of her hair was torn out, apparently. 10 days later, 18-year-old Lucy Scales and her sister were attacked on their way back from their brothers, who lived in Limehouse, which is near Docklands, Canary Wharf area of London. And the alley is still there today. It's called Narrow Alley. They noticed the person wearing a large cloak that was standing at an angle in the passage as they were walking through. When they got close to this person, they spurted out a quantity of blue flame directly in her face. She instantly dropped to the ground and was seized with violent fits, which continued for several hours. Corset again.
Exactly, telling you.
After Lucy was attacked, the person just quickly walked away. They made no effort to lay hands on either of the women. I think they must have learned that screaming issue there. And he was described as being tall, thin, and of gentlemanly appearance, covered with a large cloak, and carrying a small lamp similar to what the police used at the time. So he's got a lot of disguises, this lad.
Yeah, he must have realised that he needed to carry a lamp to look like a policeman, because he forgot that in his first disguise, that policemen carry lamps, but he didn't have a lamp the first time, so he's like, can I borrow a light? Her first question should have been, you're a copper, where's your lantern? Exactly.
I mean,
foolish girl.
That's not victim blame, but yeah, stupid bitch.
She brought it on herself.
Yeah. I mean, God, I can't imagine what she was wearing. But after these attacks, the police stepped up their efforts and they did interview several people, but they found no evidence to link these people to the attacks. There was a few people brought before the magistrates, and one of the magistrates did say the first attack on Jane was probably drunken high spirits rather than any entity. Mr. Alsop offered 10 guineas, which is approximately £1,000 in today's money, and a Member of Parliament, Sir Edward Codrington, offered a further £5. He was digging deep for that.
It's a cool name.
Yeah.
Codrington.
And even the Duke of Wellington, the defeater of Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo, took to the streets on horseback and armed to hunt this spring-heel Jack.
Wow. Did he not have anything better to do?
Well, he was 70, to be honest with you, so he'd retired from everything, so I think he was just like, God, do you think anyone remembers Napoleon nowadays? I used to be someone. I was a contender. Now I'm just in a nappy in this home.
I'm going to get this name back for myself by defeating Spring-Heel Jack, the brute.
Yeah, but he didn't.
He didn't know.
In April of the same year, Jack now decided to go a bit further afield. He made an appearance in Brighton, accosting a gardener, apparently. The actual newspaper article claims that something in the shape of a bear or some other four-footed animal growled at the gardener and proceeded to chase him for some time before leaping a wall to escape. Now, don't know why or how that's related to someone who blows fire. But
and wouldn't you know if a bear was chasing you? But it was definitely a bear.
Yeah, if you're a gardener, you spend a lot of time outdoors. You know animals, surely. Even if they're not native to your land, you know what they look like.
Yeah.
Maybe he was a fox and he was just pissed.
Just a big fox. A big cat.
Could have been.
It's just like a Maine Coon, and he was like, "It was a bear," because he was so embarrassed afterwards. After he hid, and then the cat ran past, and he was like, "Oh shit, it's just a cat." And he was like, when the police come, and they were like, "What is this screaming about?" It was a bear or some other four-footed, large, very large, bigger than four of me. I could have taken it down potentially, but it would have killed me instantly. So I didn't. I just hid. But it was definitely a bear.
Yep, solved that one. Definitely. He just hid in the corner and cried a bit, I think. But the Times claimed that Spring-Heel Jack had found his way to the Sussex coast.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, so investigative journalism wasn't like top of the pile this time. It was round about this time that Jack was actually becoming a star, we would say. Like, there were several penny dreadfuls, which were comic books of the day. They actually popularised Sweeney Todd and all his pie-making nefariousness. They were written about Jack. There was a couple of plays written about him and performed in the cheaper theatres. I noticed that was an actual quote, the cheaper theatres. So not like on the main ones that you get, just the ones
it wasn't
like
Broadway.
Yeah, exactly. Not even off Broadway. Like in New Jersey kind of thing.
Kidderminster local.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it was Panto. Maybe that's what they got confused. But as well, in the puppet shows Punch and Judy, the actual character, which is portrayed as a devil, he was renamed Spring-Heeled Jack during this time as well, just to add a little bit of more menace to him, because, like, devil, nothing. Lucifer, no one. Spring-Heeled Jack, whoa!
Some guy that touches girls up in an alley.
And forcefully kisses them. Oof.
Yeah.
But don't scream, because he gets scared easy.
And walks away quickly.
Yeah.
Doesn't even run. He just walks away quickly.
You can't run on them fucking springy heels. If he tried, he'd be on the moon.
He briskly wobbles away.
Yeah. Even though he was getting more popular, the sightings of him were getting less and less, and then Jack just seemed to vanish for a few years. And it wasn't until 1843 before he was seen again. And this time again, it was outside of London. There was reports of attacks on mail coaches in Northamptonshire and East Anglia. And this was by the image of the devil himself with horns and eyes of flame. Now,
and springy shoes.
Yeah, they didn't mention it from what I could see, so I don't know why they're trying to pull it back. I think they were just trying to keep it within the consciousness to try and sell the Penny Dreadfuls, or...
Yeah, definitely, because I feel like Lucifer would feel pretty silly in springy shoes.
Yeah. And then in 1845, Jack was seen to throw a young prostitute, Maria Davis, off a bridge, where she drowned in the mud and the sewer outlet below. Yeah. Unfortunately, this really probably isn't true, because there was no newspaper articles that covered the incident and no coroner or police reports that detail a Maria Davis dying in this way. So I think it was just, again, more artistic license on myth, folklore, cheap journalism. But then, in July of 1847, there was an extraordinary case of sexual assault which greatly excited the town of Teignmouth, which is quite a weird headline to lead with, but... Apparently, this is what the Devon Times, I think it was, that wrote. The police undertook a Spring-Heeled Jack investigation and searched for a delinquent of this genus who occupied himself during the winter in frightening and annoying defenceless women, some of whom were rather roughly handled. Now, I've never been to Teignmouth. And to be honest with you, I didn't even Google where it was, but there must have been very little going on.
I was going to say, there's not a lot happening there, is there? They got very excited about a woman being manhandled rather roughly.
Yeah, and it actually turned out that these attacks were done by a Captain Finch, who was 60 years old and in ill health.
Not one to be parkouring over 10-foot fences then.
Exactly. I think the only, the tenuous link that they've got here is that he wore a skin coat which had the appearance of a bullock's hide. Take that as you will.
Spring-Heeled Jack sounds like just a really good excuse to put a mask and a cape on and go out grabbing women's boobs, to me. It seems like that was the thing at the time. Like, I can just put a mask and a cloak on and I can just go grabbing anyone and anywhere I like. And I'll just go, ha-ha, I'm Spring-Heeled Jack. And then I'll have a bit cop of feel and then I'll go home.
If we weren't on lockdown, I'd be doing that on Friday night.
Maybe so you can start up the enigma of Spring-Heeled Jack again.
I'll bring him back. This is us bringing him back just so I can get out and get me jollies off.
Well, entire town's got excited by him. Doesn't sound that bad.
Well, yeah, indeed. Jesus, I was never excited an entire front room before, never mind a town. The thing about Captain Finch is he was actually fined 17 shillings, which is about £50 for each assault, which is kind of a lot, but people were being hanged in the area for like theft and stuff. So he may have got away with it by being a retired captain from the army there.
Even if he was a dirty old bastard.
Yeah, and I think the judge actually said that he didn't really want to progress with the charges, but it was quite obvious that it was him, and he couldn't really not. In 1855, Jack then appeared in the West Midlands in Old Hill. The customers at the Cross Inn claimed to see a figure with cloven hooves and horns leap from roof to roof on the other side of the street. Now, kicking out time at a pub, you're gonna see some stuff, aren't you? Really?
If you've been in there since dinner time, definitely.
Yeah, and it is the West Midlands. They've got nothing else to do, have they, really, than drink their woes away. So,
can confirm.
Yeah, I mean, so the police did confirm that cloven hoof prints were found on the roofs where the figure was spotted, but I'm taking that with a pinch of salt. I'm not having that at all.
Right, now has he got cloven hooves or has he got springy shoes? They need to make their minds up here. He's either spring-heeled Jack or he's, basically the devil. Spring-heeled Jack doesn't have cloven hooves. He has springy shoes. Hence, spring-heeled Jack.
Yeah, this is the thing as well. And in some of the research that I looked at, they tried to tie him to the Devil's Tracks in Devon, which were in or around this time in which a set of tracks, cloven two-footed tracks, were found in Devon. And they couldn't conceive how this could be, but he's got spring heel shoes.
Yeah, they can't keep up with their own bloody lies.
Not cloven. Yeah, so it kind of does get distorted, and you can see why we're saying this is an urban legend, and it's not even folkloric, to be honest with you. It's just it should be in Grim to the Brim. I'll be honest with you, but
maybe it will be.
Yeah, indeed. And then in 1872, the reports of a Peckham ghost started to appear in papers. A ghost was going around the place of Peckham, which is most famous for Del Boy. And it was described as a mysterious figure, quite alarming in appearance. And from that, the News of the World made a claim that this was the work of Spring-heeled Jack, who terrified a past generation. Less said about News of the World, I think, is better, really. Yeah. It's just
rubbish. Yeah. It's rubbish is what it is.
It's not even going anymore. That's how bad it is. It was. And then in 1877, April, Jack was reported to be terrorising soldiers at Aldershot Barracks. Now, this is hilarious. So the story goes, a sentry was on duty and he issued a challenge to a peculiar figure advancing towards him. This was ignored by the effigy, and they proceeded to come up beside the sentry and deliver several slaps to his face.
Did he just stand there and let them?
This is a soldier on duty.
He just stands there while someone goes, boop, 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 boop.
Exactly. He's just stood there going, stop. And the figure goes, no. And he goes, oh, all right. And then he gets slapped several times. He goes, whoa, what are you doing? This is
brilliant.
So another guard shot at the figure, but there appeared to be no visible effect. And the stranger then disappeared into the darkness with astonishing bounds. Now, there were a few more incidents at the base in which Spring-heeled Jack was apparently he wrestled with another sentry. Don't know how that happened. These are the British soldiers of the time. We just won fucking the Battle of Waterloo less than 50 years ago, and they're getting slapped round the face by a ghost. And then Jack, in quote marks, narrowly escapes capture by a group trying to hunt him down. But funnily enough, as soon as a shoot-on-sight order was issued to the men and the sentries were given extra ammunition, the apparition never appeared again.
Funny that.
Yeah. We
Ghosts
need to get
that are scared of bullets.
Yeah. Apparently 30 years later, in an autobiography of someone who was there at the base at the time, said they knew who it was, but the person never actually got a court-martial or was never charged with doing anything. But it's kind of known that this was someone just having a little bit of a laugh with the new guys. But I think it's hilarious that they're saying it's Spring-Heel Jack, and he slapped the sentry on duty.
You just come up and you just find this this new soldier just in tears, floods of tears, and you're like, "What's happening?" Spring-Heel Jack, he slapped me in the face, really, really hard. Oh, man up, walk it off.
I'd like to imagine it as like Spring-Heel Jack had his hands and was like, "Why are you hitting yourself? Why are you hitting yourself? Why are you hitting yourself?" and the sentry was just like, "I don't know."
Why? So Spring-Heel Jack, I mean, aside from, obviously groping women, he was kind of quite polite in his,
Yeah, he didn't go out to like stab people up. All right, he blew fire, but
did he?
It's not reported that anybody kind of got that's like injuries from them. Obviously, like Jane also had some of her hair pulled out and whatnot, but he could have been a lot worse.
He just was going around cutting people's clothes and kissing people randomly. Slapping him in the face. It's not really. It's not Jack the Ripper, is it?
Yeah, it's not the worst thing that we'll cover, I suppose.
No, not even remotely. It's one of the funniest, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's goddamn hilarious. And wait till we get to the culprits, Jesus. In autumn of 1877, Jack was witnessed in Lincoln, which is 170 miles from Aldershot. So he's getting his steps in. He's doing a lot of walking up and down the country. He was seen to be wearing the skin of a sheep.
Oh, he's changed from a bear or a bullock.
Yeah, and then a mob chased him, but Jack leapt distances of up to 20 feet. And then when some of the mob shot at the apparition, it had no effect again, and Jack was said to have bounded over the Roman monument, the Newport Arch, and escaped by springing and bounding over roofs.
That sounds very fantastical.
Yeah, I don't really know what to say. Maybe it was a kicking out time again. Maybe that's what happened.
It certainly sounds like it.
Yeah, and then in 1888, Jack was spotted on the roof of a church in Everton, in Liverpool, and then in 1904, he made his last appearance by taunting residents and jumping 20 feet up onto roofs and back down again. Don't know why, but this was in Liverpool, so whatever. He was described as...
Could he get any worse? Now he's taunting people?
I know.
Jesus Christ, what next?
No. Your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries. I don't know if that's a direct quote, but it may as well be. Why not? He was described as sporting a mask, long boots, and a black cloak. And after that, he kind of disappears into the history books, let's say. So, who do we think did it? There are a few culprits, and one of them is a right one. All I'm going to say. So, Henry Beresford was the third Marquis of Waterford, and he was a little bit impish. He liked a little bit of a laugh and a day out with the boys, let's say. The phrase to paint the town red actually came from the Marquis, and this is a hilarious story. In April 1837, in Melton Mowbray, of all places, he must have wanted a pie or something. But after a day at the races, they turned up at Melton Mowbray and they wanted to get in, go to the pub, get some sleep, whatever. But in them days, they had toll keepers and you had to pay to get in. So the toll keeper, obviously, he kind of wanted money up front from these people because he thought, oh, they're a little bit wary. I need to keep my eye out on these. And instead of actually paying, they decided to attack the toll keeper. But rather than use anything like traditional, like clubs or sticks or stones, they actually found a pot of red paint and decided to paint the toll keeper.
and again, he just let them?
Yes. And then a local constable tried to intervene and they painted him red as well. So they moved off into the town and the Marquis, with his trusted team of painter and decorators, went on a rampage. I don't know how many pots of paint they had, but they went round knocking over plant pots, knocking on doors, and they painted the bank and one of the pubs red. Now, several solitary policemen tried to apprehend them and intervene them, but all of them were overwhelmed and all of them were painted red. So I don't know how pissed they were, but they must have been. But when actually one of them was apprehended and they were taken to Bridewell Prison, the Waterford Painters Union turned up, they stormed the prison, they assaulted 2 police constables and broke 3 locks and ran off with him.
What?
They broke
the
him out.
Painters Union?
Yeah. Which is what I'm calling these guys. So he didn't actually get on the phone and go, look, I've just been painting everyone red and now I'm a member of your union. So, but yeah, when one of them was apprehended, all the other people decided to storm this prison, kind of thing.
How were the constables overwhelmed? They've got batons, they've got guns. I mean, they've got sheer brute force, and they got overwhelmed by a bunch of guys with paint cans.
Yeah, it's they have paintbrushes as well. Come on now.
They should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah. So the following day, or whenever the Marquis had sobered up, because I don't think they're one and the same thing, if I'm honest, because if you're that pissed that you go around painting people, you have tied one on. He paid for all the damage to the people and the property and he apologised, but he did actually end up in front of the magistrate and each of the group were fined £100 for what they had done. So it was quite a lot of money that they got fined for that little bit of tomfoolery. But later in the same year, he actually went to Bergen, which we've covered in the Isdal Woman, which, as we all know, is in the lovely place of Norway. And he went there because he was decided to sail to the North Pole. I don't know what his thought process was with this, or
I think he was like
just pissed permanently. I think he was just pissed.
Terminal disease, and he had a bucket list.
He must have been like, just fuck it, why not? He was
proper up for a laugh.
Like Harry when he was younger. Like, you know, let's go for it. No one can touch me. I'm just gonna go as outrageous as I can be.
I'm gonna paint the town red. I'm gonna go to the North Pole, and then fuck it, I'm gonna get my cookout in Vegas just to top it all off.
Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, while he was in Bergen, along with a local girl, we know how them Norwegians are, they were involved in a disorder that resulted the Marquis getting a whack over the head with a morning star of a local watchman. Now, if you don't know what a morning star is, it's one of them mace things with, like, blades coming out of it.
It's got spikes on it, hasn't it?
Yeah. So he got twatted over... He was pissing someone off that much that they just went, no, not having it. And twatted him with it.
How many people died in Game of Thrones because of that?
Well, he was in a really bad way. I'm
not surprised.
He was in hospital, but he recovered and he went to face trial. But he was absolved of all and any wrongdoing after an interception of the local British consul. And the poor fucking watchman had to pay all the costs. I was like,
oh dear.
That watchman, he must have been like, he was...
As if his day couldn't get any worse.
He was a right one, this lad, and I twatted him, and now I've got to pay. Fucking hell.
He painted all me mirrors.
He was painting the fjords red. What did you want me to do? So these are kind of the reasons why the Marquis was, I don't want to say fingered, but the Marquis was pointed at for being the spring-heeled Jack. Now, just because he was a right one and he did a couple of things that are a little bit ooh, a little bit ah, I think it's a little bit of a fast stretch to try and put the blame at his feet. Plus the fact, I think he died in 1867, so the attacks went on, like, or everything that was said to be Spring Hill Jack went on a lot longer than his death. Now, the reason why they're trying to get this tenuous link is because during one of the attacks, an embroidered coat of arms with the letter W was seen on Jack, and authors have kind of speculated that his friends, who were experts in applied mechanics, could have devised some kind of jumping shoes for him. Now, that is the most tenuous link I've ever come across in some things. And the main theory is that the Marquis, he was slighted by a woman and he wanted to get revenge on her, so he took out revenge on all women, and he didn't like police, so he thought, aha, I'll just piss everyone off by doing that.
It's a bit of a stretch, given that he didn't give a shit that people saw him without a disguise for everything else he did.
Exactly. The lad went and painted policemen, like, just with his own face. Do you know what? Yeah. It's like he gave a crap.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it was him.
So I think that's one of the massive stretches there. Another... I'm not going to say suspect, but another person that was claimed to be Spring-Heeled Jack was Joseph Darby, who was a world champion spring jumper. If you don't know what a spring jumper is, then come on.
It just wasn't enough for him to be a world champion spring jumper. He had to go about groping women and cutting their dresses.
Exactly. He just didn't get the amount of women that he thought that being a world champion spring jumper would get him, so he had to go out disguised and kiss their faces randomly. He did shows up and down the country in which he would jump over from a standing start, jump over a full-size billiard board, which was nearly 3 foot high and 12 foot in length. He jumped onto a man's face while he was lying down without causing the man any harm.
What?
Yeah, it's so he'd jump on and then step off the man's face and then land, but because he'd be so light on the touch, he wouldn't cause the man any harm.
Who was the idiot that volunteered to be the man who got his face stepped on?
Well, he just pulled some
moron.
pull someone from the crowd. And what he'd do as well is he'd do a trick called the jumping over oceans, which kind of represented the jump from England to America, in which he'd jump over a water tank, take one step on the water in the water tank, and then complete the jump, if you know what I mean, without getting the upper part of his shoe wet.
Sounds a bit pointless.
Yeah, but it's kind of walking on water as well, so...
But I still think that's why he didn't get any girls.
Well, yeah, I mean...
Because you're barring, mate.
Well, exactly, he was a jumper. What the fuck? Like, what do you do? I'm a world champion jumper. Next!
What's the most exciting thing you've ever done? Well, I jumped on a guy's face.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm looking for more of a theatre goer, really.
Yeah, I think you want Brighton. But yeah, the only reason why I've actually mentioned him is because he was spotted practicing his jumps by leaping over a canal in the Black Country, and he was using a miner's light on his so he could see, and someone came across him and thought Spring-Heeled Jack had returned to the Black Country, but clearly
he could jump across a canal.
Yeah. So this is like his patented jump. So what he'd do is he'd jump into the canal, but then jump out of the canal.
Right. Okay.
So he'd take two kind of jumps to clear the canal, but one would be while he's on the canal. It took me a while to get it.
I feel like I'm gonna have to like YouTube this just to see it put into action if anybody still does it, because that's odd.
He actually claimed he didn't know how he managed to do it. So what he'd do is he'd take a standing jump at the edge of the canal, jump into the canal, but his touch would be so light, or however he did it, he could actually push himself off the water and make it to the other side.
Did he have really big shoes on? You know, like them stuff that you wear on the snow to spread the surface of if you step out?
He may have done. He may have like had size 14, 15 shoes, and then maybe that's how he got his women, because that's what I'd lead with, to be honest with you. Big shoes, big socks, you know, that's...
What I always wanted is a guy with humongous feet and ordinary proportion body. Essentially what I want is a clown. Be still, my heart. Where have you been all my life? No.
Yeah, it took me a while to kind of work that out, but when you think about it and you visualize it, you think, well, he's actually running on water in essence. But yeah, and he did this. He was like I'm not going to say sideshow freak, but he was, and he did this trick all up and down the country. So people had seen it, and it was reported in the Australian newspapers and the Canadian newspapers. And when he was asked about it, he said, I don't know actually how I do it. I just don't think about it. I just do it. And he held a lot of records for a standing high jump. He could jump 6 feet straight up, clear 6 feet straight up. He could, like I say, he could jump over a 12-foot long billiard table and 3 foot high billiard table from just a standing start. So he was very bouncy. But that's
I don't think he would have needed to be Spring-Heeled Jack, though.
Exactly. And all reports say that he didn't actually move out of the local area. So
he was down the pub every night, got witnesses.
Yeah, he ended up running a pub in 1903, I think, and he died in 1927.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. And then the third and final one that I've got is just... I was going to say mass hysteria, but I'm just going to say nonsense, really, because Spring-Heeled Jack, when quote marks, he became into the public consciousness, I think it was more just a bogeyman who was at the door, who parents warned their children about. Beware of Spring-Heeled Jack. He'll come and get you. He'll jump through the window, kind of thing. Yeah. And I think one person saw it, or had. One person was sexually assaulted by someone, and because they were in such a tizzy about it, then they kind of just went with what they knew. And if this was kind of in the social consciousness that there was a bogeyman out there, it's going to be the bogeyman kind of thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was a lot of attacks going on up and down London. I mean, this is just a few years before, during, preceding Jack the Ripper. So there was a lot of bad people out there, and in London there is anyway, because it's Southerners in it. But I think it was just an easier way to explain away what had happened if you were knocked out of sense. I mean, like the papers were saying, the women were swooning and they'd never been back in their senses. Maybe that was kind of a thing. Maybe the women there were trying to explain who it was, and the men were just going, "Oh no, it must be Spring-Heeled Jack. She's all in a tizzy," kind of thing. You know,
yeah.
Men are dicks, and especially more so back then, because they thought they were the dogs bits, and they weren't. But yeah, I personally, I don't think there was a Spring-Heeled Jack. I think there was more of a be careful, lock your doors, because someone's out there kind of thing. And there was someone out there. There was a lot of someone's out there. But
yeah, it definitely wasn't one person. It was a lot of different people that were, I think, just basically playing pranks. I actually found an article in the St. James Chronicle, which was from the 20th of March 1838, and this was about a guy called Daniel Grenville, who apparently was a simple-looking fellow with a most bewitching obliquity of vision. And so a policeman saw a number of women and children running in every direction, screaming out, "Here's Spring-Heeled Jack!" He drew his staff and, screwing his courage to the sticking place, whatever that fucking means, waited for the monster, whom several of the frightened women had gathered around him, pointed out as the prisoner. Perceiving that a sort of blue froth was at his mouth and that his features were not altogether natural, he went up to him and, seizing him by the collar, dragged him to a butcher's shop, by the light of which he discovered that he wore a mask embellished at the mouth with blue glazed paper. The prisoner, who he said did not mean to frighten anyone, was discharged with a caution, and the cause of alarm ordered to be burned.
What was his end game there? He didn't mean to scare anyone, but he's going about in a mask with that's
blue paper at the mouth. So that explains the blue flames, blue glazed paper. And then, right, this is my favourite, and I totally forgot to Google what it is as well. Right? So it says, the title is just Spring-Heeled Jack again. A man answering to the above description recently was asked, "To what do you attribute your wonderful agility?" So this is Spring-Heeled Jack giving an interview, right?
Okay, yeah.
He answered, "Salubrine, and if you write and enclose a stamped address envelope, you will get a free sample by return," he casually remarked.
Fuck, you know, the grift. I like him. I like his style.
Yeah, so they didn't arrest him. They interviewed him.
We'll give you a full-page advertisement in the paper.
I know, right? Then, in the Leicester Evening News on the 20th of October 1929, £100 reward for Spring-Heeled Jack will be given to the person, information leading to the person proved to have been responsible for poisoning dogs in the Stockport district.
The fuck?
So now he's getting blamed for poisoning dogs, just randomly.
He's like down level in his game, isn't he? God, is he having a dry patch or something?
This is my favourite, right? The Dundee Courier.
Jesus Christ.
August 20th, 1891. A singular incident occurred on Tuesday night in the Market Square, Gala Shields, when an imaginary spring-heeled Jack was mobbed. For some time, tales have been going about a ghost or spring-heeled Jack making nocturnal perambulations in Gala Park district and performing ghostly antics, and more or less accurate descriptions of the spirit have been circulated. On Tuesday night, a large crowd was in the Market Square listening to the town band when a peculiarly dressed female came on the scene. It was suggested that this spring-heeled Jack and the poor woman was set upon by the excited crowd and had to be taken for safety to the police office. So they basically mobbed some woman who they thought was Spring-Heel Jack for no reason at all.
Yeah, I like the way that opens up with saying, like, it wasn't even a mythical Spring-Heel Jack or whatever. It's like, yeah, it didn't happen, but we're going to report on it anyway. Just some woman turned up like, oh, I'll wear this dress out tonight. Oh, I think you may take it down a bit, love. You know what they like out here. I mean, it is Scotland, but Jesus Christ. I mean, I look at some pictures and go, how did she leave the house like that? But surely...
Well, speaking of outfits where you shouldn't have left the house like that, although it was a profession, there was another newspaper article I came across where there was a nurse who just moved into the area and she went to work dressed in her white nurse's outfit, and she said people walking towards her in the street just basically dispersed and ran back into their houses, and when she got to her place of work, she was like, what the shit is up with everybody here? Everyone's just mental. And they were like, oh, they might have thought you were Spring-Heeled Jack in that get-up. What the shit? She's dressed like a nurse. What else is she going to look like? A nurse.
Oh, why are people idiots? I mean...
Oh, they tickled me. Oh, but that woman getting beaten up because people thought that she was Spring-Heeled Jack because she was peculiarly dressed.
Jesus Christ. That's it. You've got to conform or else... I mean, I think what's amazing about this is for how long they managed to get life out of it.
67 years.
Yeah, it's just... Even Jack the Ripper didn't get, like, close to that. I mean...
No.
And he... Alright, he had a distinctive style, but it's all the different... The different descriptions of him. It was a four-footed beast, but it was Spring-Heeled Jack. It was a woman in a dress, but it was Spring-Heeled Jack.
It was a nurse, but it was Spring-Heeled Jack.
It was the devil, and he was blowing fire and had horns and had cloven feet, but it was Spring-Heeled Jack. Trust me.
Some dude's poisoning dogs. It's got to be Spring-Heeled Jack, because that's what he's known for.
Yeah.
Touching up women and poisoning dogs.
Jesus. I mean, yeah, he got blamed for a lot of stuff, didn't he?
Yeah.
But there's no way other than this was I think it was a fantasy. It was, I think maybe the Penny Dreadfuls came before, and it was maybe just an easy way to describe a lot of stuff happening.
Mm-hmm.
That the police couldn't be arsed looking into, to be quite honest.
I mean, if you think like realistically, so you've got the blue flames, which we've now discovered is down to tissue paper and a mask. The glowy eyes, which clearly is a mask. Then you've got actually some of them used to carry lanterns underneath their capes as well to make their faces glow. So then there's that. So then you've got parkour is a thing. So I mean, just because it wasn't labelled back then doesn't mean it wasn't a thing back then. Clearly it was, hence, Mr. Springy, I got no girls.
Yeah.
So, and the metal claws that are ripping the clothes. So, I mean, look at Freddy Krueger. He just basically stuck some scissors onto the end of a gardening glove. It's not that hard to do, really, is it? So... That could also be very easily done. I mean, it could have been, what do you call it? A knuckle duster with spikes on, couldn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
It's not an impossible costume to put together. If you can jump a bit higher than everyone else, it's not an impossible feat to pretend to be a demon.
Yeah, I think that it's just such an easy way to explain a lot of stuff that's going on when you don't have a perpetrator.
Yeah.
Especially with and the more fantastical the story, someone knocking on the door. I mean, the first kind of attacks that were pre the Jane Alsop attacks were on servants and people of the lower classes, kind of thing. So they weren't really pushed as it being this fantastical monster. But as soon as it became someone of the upper classes, the gentry kind of thing, I think the papers, and certainly the papers, to try and sell stuff. And I mean, when you're looking at the kind of papers that they've been reported in, which is the News of the World and the Sun, which were things back then as well. I don't think they were as bad as they were, but they're still shitty pieces of paper.
Yeah.
But I think to try and sell more copy, and as well with Penny Dreadfuls, they were specifically aimed at lower class people because they were done over a period of time and done in chapters. So they were like the graphic novels of their time, and they were easy to read, and they were page turners. And I think that...
And they only cost a penny.
Exactly. They were cheap. They were printed on, like, recycled paper. Well, probably not. Probably just toilet paper.
I doubt it.
They'd
be used as toilet paper.
Yeah, exactly. They were just easy to churn out, and the stories didn't even have to be great. They just had to be fantastical and put a little bit of fear in them. And with the quality of journalism from the News of the World and the Sun, I think they could have easily got onto that. And unfortunately, in that kind of way, when something becomes popular in newspapers, even the quote marks upper class newspapers will start covering it because it's always to sell copy, always to get the paper out there, really, rather than the news.
Yeah.
So I think, unfortunately, as much as we want to believe that there was a springy man that was in Assassin's Creed-like kind of demon out there, I just think it was a lot of people who were trying to wear disguises that were shit at wearing disguises.
But got away with it.
Yeah, and as much as I'd love to believe it to be the Marquis of Waterford, I just think he was just on his own, being his own kind of nutter.
He does sound like a legend, though.
Yeah, he does, and I bet he was popular with the boys. When he rang the boys, they were like, "Yes, there's gonna be some carnage tonight." But as for Spring-Heeled Jack, I think he's always going to be a myth and a legend. Definitely not a real person, because 67 years, I mean, he'd have to be 80 at least. And if you're 80 and you're fucking jumping over walls when you're 80, then I can't even
it's
get
Captain
up.
Tom.
Yeah, I can't even get up from my chair nowadays without my knees cracking. So, God bless him.
Yeah, but you haven't had the practice.
Yeah.
He's never stopped jumping from roof to roof.
What, Captain Tom?
Yeah.
Is he still walking around his back garden?
He doesn't need to. He's jumping around on roofs.
Well, yeah, that's it. He's done that as a cover, hasn't he? He's like, right.
Yeah.
Right. And there'll be some, I bet in the next couple of days there'll be some Spring-Heeled Jack shenanigans going on in the papers, won't they? And he'll be there going, ha ha ha. They think I only walk around the back garden, but really, I jump from roof to roof.
Them blokes that run the toll booths on the M6. Fucker just came at me with a tin of red paint. Never even saw it coming. Bastard.
He slapped me twice.
Didn't see his face, but he had a cape.
Yeah, I mean, oh.
That'd be amazing.
That'd be hilarious, yeah. I could just hear the jangling of medals. I don't know what they were, but looked like he had a knighthood as well, but
And a Zimmer frame.
fucking...
Oh, fuck me.
Oh, Jesus, yeah. And on that bombshell,
Yeah.
that was the tale of Spring-Heeled Jack. And this has been the MO podcast with me, Consummation,
And me, Atreya.
and we shall... Thank you so much for joining, and we shall see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.